So I was trying to make this beautiful underground passage that would mainly transition between like a building. You can imagine like we have like a house or something, and then here we'll have like a little stairs that would go underground, right? And I'm okay, that seems nice, right? Go to the landscape, plop it there. It seems a little bit weird, and then I hit play, and it stays weird, right? Because the landscape is going right through the blueprint itself. So I was wandering on the YouTube and trying to find something helpful, and I come across this video which is basically the same thing they're trying to achieve.
You know, I like it, but here's the downfall. There's a like crypt, I guess is what it's labeled as, so it's a crypt, and I tried to add it into my world. I got this land right here. This is the ground.
But the issue is he solves it by drawing a opacity mask, but then he does this at the editor, right? And ideally we want to just plop the blueprint in any place, and then if it intersects with the land, then it should cut out this part of the land. So that got some direction, but was not the full picture yet. So I wonder more, like I was trying to find like a better way to do this dynamically, and then I come across this other video which was almost exactly what I needed.
This thing. So this is just gonna work as a nice. Actually, I forgot to turn off the shadows, but yeah, it works at runtime as you saw, and it can be like it can just be any shape, right? It's basically just a sphere that is projecting onto the virtual texture in the way that it calls the visibility of the landscape, as well as grass and all the other stuff. And then it also makes it so objects in the sphere ignore the landscape's collision. And yeah.
So I was trying to combine both solutions, right? By the way, you can find both videos in the description, so you can check it out and then give some love, give some like. And I was expecting this to be straightforward enough, but then it was much more trouble than I thought it would be, because one is like doing it in the editor, which is half of the solution, and the other one, even though he has the effect done, he does not cover everything because he assumes or just go very fast. Right? He was not doing a tutorial, so he just goes very fast of the stuff, and then he assumes you understand what's happening. And if you don't understand what's happening, then you get lost very fast. So yeah. Right, so this is what I managed to make it working. Right, so you can see I can move this, and it creates the effect like it's drawing the opacity mask where the shape is, right? And then you can choose any shape really, even this weird one. Let's just rotate this and put here, and then you see it, any place it's overlap, it will draw the opacity mask, right? You can make it like a cube or whatever you want to, really. Right. Okay, and then what I did was just add this green overlay so I can see where it is, because otherwise you just see the empty space. It's annoying. And then I just plop this down in the same blueprint, so I just make a copy of the blueprint and then add this inside the blueprint. So now, wherever I place this other blueprint, I will see the staircase, right? So we don't have this annoying piece of land covering the entrance. Okay, so how do we do this effect? So let's go over all these steps one by one. First thing you want to do is go to the project settings, not editor settings, and go to render, type virtual, and make sure this one is checked. The first time you check it, it will also check this import one. I don't know why, but most people recommend like you don't have this one selected because it messes up other stuff when you import new maps. Anyway, so just make sure enable virtual text is checked and restart your engine. After you restart, just go into new level, open word level, and then you have the word. Alright, so what I will do is I'm gonna create a folder and gonna save everything inside of this folder so we can have everything together, because I create a lot of tests and it will be messy if you don't make like a separate folder. Right, so tutorial, land, whatever, and I'm gonna save this level. Okay. Then what you want to do is go to your landscape, select the material, and then you're just gonna type grass, and then you have this material grass. So you can see it's come from the game start content, right? So you just grab this grass from the start content pack. I'm just using grass. You use whatever material you want. You can create your own. What you're gonna do, you're gonna make a copy. Just press Ctrl D or make a copy in any way you know it. And gonna move this to our folder. Okay, now that we have the material, let me just rename this. So material. Keep everything consistent. So first thing you need to do is we need to check this use material attributes, but when you do this, it will disconnect everything. All right, so before you do that, you want to create like a set material attributes, and you're gonna use whatever your material is already using. So this case is base color. Let me put this here. So in this case is base color, roughness, and normal. Right, so roughness is straight up just a 1. So just click on the plus 3 times. So make sure you select this, click on the plus, and then you have base color, roughness, and normal. Right, so then I'm just going to make the connections to there instead. And the normal is coming all the way from the guy down there. So just do this. So now we check this use material attributes, and we're gonna basically have like one extra step. So just put this in place where this one was before. And for now, we're just gonna connect it directly, and we're gonna change absolutely nothing. But this will be useful later on. One last step is make sure you check mask it here under blend. Make sure you click it here and then check mask it. Otherwise, the opacity won't work because you need the opacity mask for this. Okay, this halfway done. Not halfway, this one material done. Now make sure you're gonna use material we made. And nothing will change because it's exactly the same material and it's the exact same attributes. We're just setting the attributes in a different way. So now you want to click on the landscape and go to click here, like collapse all categories, and then go to virtual textures. Right, you want to add 2. Click twice on the icon, you're gonna see this. So click here, runtime virtual texture, you're gonna create one. Make sure you get the right folder. Doesn't really matter where you place it, but just to be consistent, right? So runtime virtual texture, we're gonna call this tutorial texture height and gonna make sense in a second. And here you're gonna do exactly the same thing. I call this runtime virtual texture tutorial texture material. I'm not sure if you need both. Seems like we need both. But anyway, so that's how I get it to work. So you get one for the height map and another one for the actual material, right? And then now that you have both, you create here and click create the volumes. Just click here. I'm gonna create 2 items for you automatically, so you don't need to manually create this, right? So, and they will be already set. You can see this line covering the entire ground. And one is using the height map and the other one is using the material. So that's basically what we need for the landscape. And we have the material, right? So now what we need to do is to create another material, right? That will be the material or the actual shape we're gonna use, not the shape, to do the blending, right? So to actually paint, mask the ground with the opacity mask, right? So just gonna call this material to real, I don't know, opacity mask or whatever you're gonna call it. Doesn't really matter. This material is very simple, right? You just click here, hold, and press number 4 on the keyboard. Gonna bring up this. Click on this pattern here, and just make sure it's white. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 in all RGB colors. Now you're gonna right click on an empty space and you're gonna type virtual virtual text output, right? And then you're gonna write it also to here. This is the important part. You're gonna save it. So this material is gonna write this white color into this virtual texture output that we're gonna define in our blueprint, right? So now we're gonna create a blueprint, just an actor blueprint, BP, oops, score, I don't know, mesh row or whatever name you feel like. You could just like add the meshes directly here, like a cube, and then use it as the same, gonna be the same for everything you do, but you can make it dynamic if you just have like a mesh itself without any selection of a cube or a sphere or anything, right? So you do the selection after. So this the mesh, static mesh, right? Make it the default, and you don't do anything with it for now. I'm gonna go to the constructor script, and actually you don't need to do this. You're gonna set mesh, and you're gonna find the one that has your variable static mesh. I'm gonna pull up the variable automatically, and we just connect it here. And this one you're gonna make it a variable, right? Promote to a variable, and then you just call it like whole mesh and make it public. So that way we can select the mesh from any place, and it will be already instance editable when you do this. So you can have different holes with different shapes as you wish. Save this, compile, it won't do anything, it won't have anything on the viewport, that's fine. So what you need to do is come here into the collision, sorry, not the collision, where is it? Virtual texture, collapse all, and you're gonna have virtual texture, and then make sure you add 1. And you're gonna use the material that we created for the runtime virtual texture, right? So tutorial material, not the height. And here you're gonna set this to never. If it's on from virtual texture, it will render in the screen, and we don't want to see the mesh in the screen, right? So put never, so it will only renders to the texture and to show in the screen. So I'm gonna save this, I'm gonna compile. Won't work yet because we didn't finish editing everything, but we can grab the blueprint, put it here. It's empty because it don't have anything on it, but we will see our how you call it, our whole mesh here, right? And so now you can like a sphere, and then it will be a sphere. You can add this, whatever this is, right? Like a cube, whatever. I'm gonna just put a simple cube because it's easier to see. Right, and you see when you click outside, it disappears, right? That's because we set it to never, so it doesn't render. Okay, so what you are doing here, right? We have a landscape material that is just the same, we didn't change anything. And this landscape material have those two virtual textures that we created. Virtual textures here, right? So the height map and the texture material itself. So we need to go to both of them. So in the height map, the one that has the height, I just put word height and save it. For the other one, which is the material, I don't know if it's needed, but then I put here on the base, color, normal, specular, and mask, right? So I was having trouble to make this work before, and then it works when I use this one plus another changes. So that's why we're adding it. So now the only thing we have is this material that will be writing on the virtual text. We just need to read this and overwrite. So before we save it, right? So we're gonna do this in a material function, so you can redo this in any other material without having to copy all the nodes. You can paste out the nodes here if you want, but it's much easier if you just have one function and then call the function. Okay, so before we go to the material function, I forgot that we don't have the mesh for the blueprints that we made. So just gonna do exactly the same we did here, but now with the material. Right, so just cross set material. Again, select the one that has the mesh, because this is your component. And it will bring up the variable automatically, just like before, and then just make it as variable, right? So we can select the material from outside. Depends if you have like a lot of materials. If you have just one and that's it, so then you can just select directly here, right? In our case will be your tutorial opacity one, right? But I like to make it dynamic, so we're just gonna do this, make it visible, right? Call it whole material, in case you have more than one for whatever reason. And now you're gonna have here, right? So opacity mask. Okay, still won't do anything because we still didn't finish our material yet, right? But we're getting there. So now we have the material that is exactly the same, except that we changed for the mask and then use the attributes here. But the mask is the only really important thing. And we have this right into this runtime virtual texture. Now we need to read this runtime virtual texture and overwrite before we set the material, right? So we're gonna create a material function. Again, you can just add the nodes here if you just want one material. where's that material function, right? So material function, tutorial, best, right? So from here, you're gonna pull it back, and then you're just gonna write set material attributes, just like before. You're gonna add 1, and that will be the opacity mask. And then from here, you're gonna do it again, but you're gonna type input. This will create the input for the function. Just giving some space here. So now what you need to do is going to get your attribute. It's exactly the same as the set, but instead of setting is getting, right? And then we want to get the opacity mask. From the opacity mask, you want to multiply it by something, right? So, and then this will be your opacity mask that will go there. From here, you're gonna want minus, so I'm gonna invert, and then from here we're gonna have another multiply, right? And then from here another multiply. No, just a second. Okay, I was not quite remembering. So we need a ship contrast. I'm doing it backwards because that's how I remember it. And then from the ship contrast, you need the actual runtime virtual texture, right? So virtual sample, runtime virtual text sample. So here is where we're gonna read the virtual texture that we are writing in the other place. So here is important that you click on the node and then click here and then select the correct virtual texture, which is the same we use in our blueprint, right? So tutorial material. And lastly, we're gonna, from here, just gonna type position, and I'm gonna have world position. So basically what this is doing, it's reading the world position from that blueprint that we are writing. We get the base color, which is just white. We're gonna use contrast here. So just hold down and press number 1. And just type it .1. You can promote this to a parameter if you want to control it outside, have like material instance, whatever. Don't really need it. And then same here, you're gonna have another one, and you just make it this 1000. So this is basically put everything to the extreme. So everything that's not black will be white, and then everything that is any other color that's black, we're gonna still black. And then we invert it to make it black, and then this will be our opacity mask. So it will basically not render anything. We'll set the opacity to 0 for anything that is in that range. Right. But if I just set this to black, I could just skip straight from here to the opacity, but it doesn't work. So anyway, so we need to do those steps here. Right, so this is the actual magic, right? So then if you wanna just want one material, just move all this to your material. So now you need to make sure your function is exposed. So click on expose library. And on your material, you're going to call it mf tutorial material function. What am I missing? Your function exposed to library, and here, come on. Okay, it's back. Go while there. So material function tutorial, okay. And now we need to do this. So That's why we changed this to material attribute in here, because we need to have like a material attribute to condense this to one stuff to be able to connect it. So now we are reading and we are writing, right? So let's see, gonna get a bunch of errors. That's normal. Then I rebuild everything. Come on. Can we work, please? So just make sure we save it. Sometimes it doesn't update and we have to save it again. And now we're gonna do this again. Okay, at least this time it was faster. Okay, now it's working. And you can see right away that it's already working, right? So we can get this and then move it, and it will be whatever you want. So you can change the to I don't know, this, whatever this is, and yeah. So that is the basic, right? So if you want to stop here, feel free. I'm just going to continue a little bit more to make it a little better to be used like in an actual blueprint. Just place the blueprint and it will be working, so you don't have to do anything. So let's just put the cube back because it's much easier to see. So in order to see the cube, what I do, I just create like another mesh, static mesh, and you just call this overlay, you call it whatever, and then you're gonna just copy the same mesh that we are getting from here, right? So set set static mesh, set mesh, yeah, and then you select overlay. You're gonna bring the overlay for you, and you're gonna use the same one that we get as a parameter, right? So we're gonna just, so this will create two meshes in the same place, right? So we're gonna come here and then make sure this one don't have any collision. Collision, right? And you should have like no collision, because this is the overlay that we want to see stuff. And also you're gonna click here and then search for hide in game, so it doesn't show it in game. And last thing, we need an actual material for this, and we can't use the same material, right? So we're gonna create a third material. This one is just to be the overlay. You can use any material you want. Just gonna create. So since we are doing everything from scratch, so this one important that you have translucent. It needs to be translucent, otherwise it doesn't work. Same thing, just click, drag. Number 4. Choose anything you like it. So the other one is green. Let's make this reddish. And then you play with the opacity. I'm gonna put directly on the 0.2, barely visible. And I just come here to the blueprint, and so we set the mesh and then you set the material. Now we're gonna set another mesh that won't be visible, and then we're gonna set the material exactly the same. Set material, select the overlay. And here you're gonna select directly, right? So audio overlay. So this will always copy the same mesh, gonna have always the same properties, and you're gonna just have like a different material. now we can see this translucent reddish. So we know the cube is there, right? And then this diameter. This doesn't make too much sense now because we're looking at the landscape. But then when you're editing your building, the cube is completely invisible and make really hard to know where it is. So with this, you can have a good sense where it is. So if we just hit play and we look around, and I don't know where the heck I added the cube. It's quite far. Okay, so let me just grab the place start, copy, then come here, location, paste. Just put this here so we can see it. Right, and there it is. It's just a row there, and you can see through it. Okay, so now just going to simulate the building real fast. Just going to modeling. So this won't be pretty. Dynamic mesh. Just so we have something to work with as a sample. I'm gonna squish you down a little bit. Transformer. Okay. And you make like big. Should be like the ground and the floor or whatever. Okay, seems good enough. Then we duplicate it. We'll just grab stair. Where is it? Here. Just accept it. Just going to dig a hole over it. So select this, go to Boolean to make this. I'm gonna keep the inputs. Apply. Now we have this there. We have this with the hole, and then we have this that we can delete it. And now we have one that has exactly the size of the stair. Of course, you don't need to do like I'm doing. You're just doing this because I don't have any building imported as a sample. So I just want to have something fast. And then if you don't know how to do those operations, like I was just doing this dynamic, it's quite interesting. A handful to have. So you build it like this, everything is a dynamic. Then you select everything, go to transform, and then you merge into one new object. Oops. You call it whatever. So for whatever you want to call it. Put, and then we delete the outputs and we just hit apply. Now it's just one mesh, it's still a dynamic mesh. Then you want to make it a static mesh, which if I convert, yeah, just click convert and static mesh, and then you apply it. And it should go on the whatever folder you are. You're going to create a generated with a user, and then you're going to create this. All right, so now I can delete this from here. And we can actually make our blueprint, right? So ignore all the tests there. So blueprint, BP, so sub 4 tutorial. Let's put the tutorial on the front. A little bit. Oops, that's not it. You need to click on an actor, and then you give the name. Right, so you can just put you there, and we're going to move you out of the generated. Subfloor. I'm going to just plop it there. So we have our subfloor with our meshes. And this will be ground level, and then it will be the underground. So doesn't really matter what we have here, right? It's just a sample. So everything is on 0, 0, 0. And then we're going to grab our hole, right? And we're going to place in there. And that's the part where it's important to have actually, I'll leave it here. Important to have a selection overlay or something so you can see where it is, because if you don't do it, it's going to be terrible. Right, so we just look at cube, and we just apply your tutorial material overlay. Right, so now we can see, well, actually, that's wrong. Tutorial material, yeah, that's the one. Right, doesn't really matter. It's like you don't really need to go precise where the stair is. Actually, it's much better if you make it bigger, like the size of the whole room. Because imagine you go into a cliff or something, and then the ground is like, it's here, but then it's go down, right? And if you just have a small area, like can I? No, I don't want to rename you. I want to change scale. Yeah. So imagine if you just have like a small area like this, right? And then this part is okay, but then down here you have the ground again. So it's much better to have like a big shape, taking the like almost the entire room or the area you needed, right? So to be much safer. Just make sure you don't go like past the building. So this is fine. This is also fine, and then we just change the perspective to the side, and then we just make sure it's actually where it should be. So we are changing the Z, right? Okay, so that's good enough. Save, compile here, and now you have our blueprint subfloor, and you see when I place it, it automatically make it the overlay for you, right? And then it will work right away. So if I hit play, you see it's already working. So this is like 8% of the way done, but you can see we still collide because we just have a transparency here, but we still collide with the mesh in the landscape. So this part is something that I thought would be simple enough, and it's supposed to be. If you add a new collision layer, which I did some tests, so let's just show what I did, but that does not work at all, right? So you create two new objects types for the collision channel, like one for the landscape and one for the pawn, and then you have two more profiles, right? So land ignore pawn, its object type of landscape, of course, and it is ignoring the my pawn, so it should not collide with the pawn at all. And then the my pawn object, its profile is backwards, right? So it's set to my pawn, and then it's ignore the landscape totally, right? And then you will just change this dynamic, right? By default, you have a pawn collision profile in your character, and then we will just swap it dynamically once you enter in the area. So that is simple enough, except that the collision itself doesn't work, right? So I just grab a third person sample, right? You just click here, clicking add feature or content pack in the third person, and it's gonna add this for you. And you go to a third person blueprint, right? And then I made some tests here for the changing the collision and all that stuff. But if you ignore all the tests and you just go to your collision, right? So and then you have the collision for the mesh, and then you have the collision for the capture collision, and then you set both to the profile you want, which in this case is ignore the land, and you would assume it would work, right? So it's ignoring anything that is on the my landscape. So we go to the landscape. Landscape, go to the collision, right? And then you change it to landscape. And it's type of my landscape, which we are ignoring here on the, let me close this. Right, so type my landscape set to ignore. And then here we are on the my landscape, we are ignoring my pawn, exactly the type we have here. And it's the same over here. You assume it would work, but unfortunately it does not work at all. You still collide with the ground. And seems like it's not that simple to disable the landscape collision. For whatever reason, it only works if you ignore this word static. But if you ignore word static, you basically ignore everything. So you're gonna ignore everything else, right? So the idea will be you ignore the landscape, but you never fall, because then you have another type of collision here in the building. But if you ignore all the word static, you're gonna ignore everything. So that's not the idea. So I made a simple test just to check up something, right? But then I really got lost in the idea, so I need to research this more, right? So on the brand new level with absolutely nothing on it, just going to go over the landscape, and I'm gonna click here and then set no collision. This just disable the collision, should disable the collision with everything, even though it still say blocks here, which is even weirder, right? So save it. No, I don't need to save it, just play, right? And then you see you still collide with, and if you add an object and then add simulate physics to it, so there's a cube, right? Put the cube there, move it up, see, simulate physics, right? Click play, and it's still colliding, right? Everything collides as if the landscape collision is not affected by the changes we did. So it's really a pain. Of course, if you do this in the landscape, it should work, but then see, even this makes no sense. So we are ignoring absolutely everything, and yet we still collide with everything else. So that's how far I went. So I still need to understand how make this switch between profile without using the word static on the character itself, right? So if I come here, let's set to custom, right? I'm gonna block it all, and then I'm gonna ignore word static. Then we fall right through. Yeah, but then we also fall right through everything else. So I'm gonna keep looking on this one. If you have any ideas, please hint me something. And if I find a workaround on a easier way to do it, and I come up with a second step. So for now, that will be it. At least we have the effect done here, and you can have your building and it will automatically cover this part. It's not super there yet, but gonna get there. Okay, thank you. Bye bye.